People talk about a new year as if it were just another page on a calendar, a symbolic reset that only has meaning if you decide to give it meaning. But what's approaching in 2026 is not symbolic, it's energetic. And if you try to manifest 2026 from the state you're in right now, you may unintentionally lock yourself into the very timeline you've been trying to outgrow. There are years that simply happen to you, years you recover from, years you learn from, and then there are years that function like thresholds, years that don't bend unless you bend, years that don't open unless you update the identity walking toward them. 2026 is one of those years. It's not waiting for your resolutions, it's waiting for your frequency. What makes 2026 different isn't astrology, numerology, global cycles, or collective awakening, although all of those do have their patterns. What makes 2026 different is something far more personal. The field around you is already restructuring. You can feel it. Your emotions aren't behaving the way they used to. Your instincts are louder. Your desires are shifting. Things that once felt stable suddenly feel too tight. Patterns you tolerated for years now feel incompatible with who you're becoming. And if you pay close attention, you'll notice that your inner world is reorganizing faster than your outer world can keep up. That's how you know a threshold is forming. Most people won't recognize this internal shift for what it is. They'll call it stress. They'll call it confusion. They'll call it burnout, restlessness, or even bad timing. But none of that explains the deeper truth. Your field is withdrawing its energy from the identity you built to survive past seasons. The discomfort you feel isn't a sign of collapse, it's a sign of transition. The identity that carried you through the last decade can't cross into the next one. And if you try to drag it with you, 2026 won't respond to your desires. It will respond to your frequency mismatch. See, manifestation isn't about asking the universe for what you want. It's about becoming the version of you that the universe can recognize. If you enter 2026 as the version of you shaped by old wounds, old dynamics, old narratives, old fears, or even old successes, then 2026 can only mirror what you bring into it. And the tragedy is that most people spend their entire year trying to change their lives externally, without ever noticing that the identity they're wearing is incompatible with the timeline they're asking for. What's emerging right now, in these final weeks before the shift, is something quantum, something subtle, something that touches the field before it touches your mind. You may feel yourself wanting different things without knowing why. You may feel a growing inability to pretend, hide, minimize, justify, or tolerate what once felt normal. You may feel your intuition getting sharper, your boundaries getting stronger, your patience thinning for anything that doesn't resonate. This isn't personality change. This is frequency divergence. You're stepping out of an old resonance band, and 2026 exists in a higher one. Quantum physics explains this through vibrational coherence. When a system raises its frequency, anything that vibrates below that threshold begins to fall away naturally. Not because it's bad, but because it can't synchronize with the new state without distorting it. This is why 2026 isn't something you should manifest impulsively. If you manifest from the frequency of who you were in 2023, 2024, or even 2025, you'll recreate cycles that no longer match who you're becoming. You have to manifest from the version of you that 2026 was built for, not the version you've already outgrown. This is the part people misunderstand. 2026 doesn't require more effort. It requires more accuracy. It requires choosing the identity that will walk into that year on your behalf. Because the universe doesn't match your hopes for the future. It matches your dominant frequency now. And right now, your dominant frequency is in flux. It's dissolving, reorganizing, expanding, shedding, and recalibrating, often all at the same time. That's why your emotions feel contradictory. That's why your desires feel unfamiliar. That's why your intuition feels louder but less explainable. You're not becoming unstable. You're becoming incompatible with your old life. 2026 is not waiting for you to be ready. It's waiting for you to become readable. And you cannot be readable until you decide who you're going to be on the other side of this inner transition. If you try to manifest prematurely, from fear, survival, confusion, or old identity, you'll distort the year before it even begins. But if you align internally, If you choose the self that your future already recognizes, then 2026 stops being a year you chase and becomes a year that collapses toward you. This threshold isn't intimidating once you understand it. It's an invitation. The kind that only appears when your next timeline is close enough to touch you. And whether you realize it or not, it's already touching you. There's something happening inside you that you might not have language for yet. A kind of quiet unraveling that feels both unsettling and inevitable. It doesn't feel like a crisis, but it doesn't feel like clarity either. It's more like an internal dissolving, a soft collapse of patterns you used to rely on. You're not breaking down, you're breaking open. And the truth is, this process started long before you realized anything was shifting. Your system has been preparing for 2026 in ways your mind hasn't caught up to yet. You've probably felt it in subtle moments. The way old habits suddenly feel heavier. The way conversations feel energetically mismatched. The way certain people drain you faster than they used to. The way you can't tolerate the same emotional loops. The way your body pulls away from anything that feels like the past repeating itself. These aren't mood swings. They're signs of structural collapse. The collapse of the identity that belonged to your previous timeline. Identity doesn't disappear all at once. It unravels quietly. It lets go in layers. You don't wake up one day as the new you. You dissolve out of the old one slowly, almost ceremonially, until one day you realize you're no longer thinking the same way, wanting the same things, or interpreting life through the same emotional vocabulary. And because this shift is happening beneath the surface, you might misinterpret it as confusion, restlessness, or even regression. But nothing about this is regression. This is what it feels like when your soul decides you're done with the version of yourself that was built on survival instead of expansion. From a neurological perspective, your brain is beginning to prune old predictive patterns, the ones that kept you alert, cautious, small, apologetic, or limited. Neural pathways that once protected you are dissolving because they don't match the future your energy is trying to step into. That's why you're experiencing a strange blend of calm and chaos at the same time. Your system is letting go of familiar threat responses without yet having fully anchored the emotional patterns of your next identity. You're between structures, between selves, between timelines. Quantum physics calls this an interference gap, the moment when the old frequency loses coherence before the new one stabilizes. It's a volatile, sensitive phase where your energy becomes extremely responsive. You feel everything. You sense everything. You intuit everything. And yet you can't explain any of it. That's because explanation belongs to the mind. But this shift is happening in the field. You're not meant to understand it yet. You're meant to let it finish. But here's the part most people miss. The identity that carried you to this moment cannot carry you into 2026. Not because it's wrong, not because it failed, but because it fulfilled its purpose. The version of you that learned to endure, to fight, to hide, to negotiate, to please, to shrink, to overfunction, to predict disaster, to expect disappointment, to settle, or to hold everything together. That version worked overtime. It kept you alive in chapters where you didn't have the resources, the clarity, or the emotional structure to do better, but you are not in that chapter anymore. And the identity formed in survival becomes a barrier when your life is trying to shift into creation. The universe isn't asking you to fix the old identity. It's asking you to release it. Because 2026 is not built for the self who fears repeating the past. It's built for the self who knows they are not anchored to that past anymore. And if you take the old identity with you, everything in 2026 will bend to match it. You'll recreate cycles you were meant to outgrow. You'll interpret opportunities through outdated filters. You'll hold yourself back without realizing why. The year won't feel different because you won't be different. The most powerful thing you can do right now is acknowledge the collapse without trying to patch it, explain it, or resist it. Let the dissolution complete itself. Let the emotional dead weight fall off. Let the mismatched connections loosen. Let the old patterns feel unnatural. Let the old identity lose its grip. You're not losing yourself. You're losing the version of yourself that kept you from becoming who you actually are. And the reason this collapse feels so deeply personal is because it is. Your future self is already influencing your present field. You can feel the pull toward behaviors, choices and boundaries that the old you would consider too much, too fast, or too unfamiliar. That's how you know a new identity is forming. You find yourself drawn toward a life you don't fully recognize yet, but somehow deeply trust. If this is resonating with you, if you can feel that subtle unraveling, if you recognize the emotional fatigue of carrying an identity that's too small, if you sense the quiet emergence of someone more aligned, more grounded, more intuitive, and more truthful, then pause for a moment and anchor this shift within yourself. Drop a comment saying, "I release who I was. I'm ready for who I'm becoming." Not as a mantra, not as a performance, but as a declaration that you're allowing the collapse instead of resisting it. Because everything about 2026 will depend on what you choose to shed in the final stretch of 2025. And in the next part, we'll explore the most powerful truth of all. Your 2026 self already exists, and it's sending signals back to you right now. There is a version of you already living inside 2026, and that version is not an abstract possibility. It's a fully formed identity that exists in the quantum field right now. Most people think the future is something they step into when the calendar changes, but that's not how timelines work. The future is not a destination you walk toward. It's a frequency that reaches backward, touching you through intuition, instinct, emotional contrast, desires that don't match your current life, and impulses that feel too bold for who you've been. The future isn't ahead of you. It's speaking to you. You've felt it. The sudden clarity that appears for no reason. The nudge to make a decision before you overthink it. The feeling that something big is coming, even if you can't explain what or why. The pull toward people, environments, projects, or versions of yourself that feel too aligned to ignore. The restlessness that keeps rising inside you, almost like your soul is outgrowing the room you're standing in. None of this is random. It's communication. Your future self speaks in frequency, not language. And if you understand how that communication works, you'll stop trying to manifest 2026 and start responding to the instructions it's already sending you. Quantum physics explains this phenomenon through retrocausality, the idea that future states can influence present conditions. This isn't science fiction, it's the nature of a non-linear field. When your future self reaches a coherent state, the signature of that coherence begins pulling your current identity toward it. That's why you feel internal contradictions right now. Your mind is still trying to interpret life through the lens of the past, while your energy is already reorganizing itself to match your 2026 self. You're being guided by a version of you that already knows how your story unfolds. And that version does not communicate in panic, doubt, or confusion. It communicates in subtle but powerful impulses, the kind of impulses that appear before the mind starts negotiating. The instinct to say yes to something you would normally postpone, the urge to walk away from something that has become too small for your next level, the sudden desire to simplify, to clean, to create, to close old doors, to tell the truth, to stop performing, to stop pretending, to stop waiting. Your future self is not trying to make sense, it's trying to make contact. This is why your current emotional landscape feels so intense. When two identities overlap, the one you're leaving and the one you're becoming, your system receives signals from both at once. That's why you feel excitement wrapped in fear, peace wrapped in pressure, clarity wrapped in uncertainty, expansion wrapped in grief. You are being stretched between timelines because the part of you anchored in 2025 hasn't fully let go, while the part of you anchored in 2026 is already calling you forward. The question is not whether your future self is speaking to you. The question is whether you are listening. You'll know you're listening when you begin moving in ways that don't match your history, but perfectly match your potential. When you protect your peace without guilt, when you choose alignment over familiarity, when you feel the pull toward decisions you can't logically defend but energetically trust, when you stop asking for permission to become who you already are. The reason these impulses feel urgent isn't because you're running out of time. It's because your future self has reached a point of coherence, and timelines tighten when coherence rises. That's why 2026 feels close, even though we haven't entered it yet. Your future self has already stabilized. and it's pulling you toward its frequency like a gravitational field. But here's the truth that few people ever realize. If you ignore these signals, if you let doubt dilute them, if you wait for the perfect moment, if you postpone decisions that were meant to shift your timeline now, you won't lose your future, but you will delay your alignment with it. Timelines don't punish you, they adjust around you. And every time you hesitate, you slip a little deeper back into the version of yourself you're supposed to be shedding. Your 2026 self can't take shape if you remain faithful to the version of you built in 2022, 2023, or 2024. Those versions were stepping stones, not destinations. The self you're becoming is communicating through every instinct that feels too pure to ignore. The discomfort you feel is not resistance, it's misalignment. And the moment you choose the impulse instead of the fear, the alignment snaps into place. Think about it. The ideas that suddenly feel too big for your current life? Those are instructions. The dreams that feel too specific to dismiss? Instructions. The intuitive whispers telling you to move, to let go, to trust, to leap, to shift your environment or your identity. Instructions. Your future self is not subtle. Your mind is just loud. 2026 will not be shaped by what you hope for. It will be shaped by how you respond to the signals being sent to you right now. The future you want is already broadcasting the frequency you need to match. And the only thing standing between you and alignment is your willingness to follow the call. In the final part, we'll bring everything together. Because there is one choice, one identity shift, that determines whether 2026 becomes just another year or the turning point of your entire life. There is a moment in every transformation where the past stops chasing you, the future starts calling you, and you're left standing in the narrow space between who you were and who you're meant to be. That space is not comfortable. It's not predictable. It's not meant to be understood with logic. It's meant to be crossed. And right now, as the energy of 2026 begins forming around your field, you are standing in that exact space. This isn't just about the new year. It's about a new identity, one that isn't born from survival, pressure, or pleasing, but from coherence. You can feel the older version of you fading, not dramatically, but quietly. Certain behaviors feel unnatural now. Certain emotional reactions don't activate the same way. Certain fears aren't believable anymore. You're not fighting to change. You're realizing you can't remain who you used to be. That's the sign that a new identity is forming, not through force, but through inevitability. 2026 doesn't require you to become someone different overnight. It requires you to stop being the version of yourself you've already outgrown. Most people try to manifest a future while dragging an old identity into it. They bring their old assumptions, old patterns, old wounds, old definitions of love, old habits of self-betrayal, old expectations of struggle. Then they wonder why the year feels the same, even when they desperately wanted it to be different. But nothing changes when the frequency stays unchanged. A new timeline cannot attach itself to an outdated self. The universe is not asking you to change through pressure. It's asking you to change through alignment, through resonance, through choosing the version of you that your future self has already become. This is the essence of quantum manifestation. The future doesn't arrive because you wish for it. It arrives because you've become the person who can hold it without collapsing. What makes 2026 radically different is that the field around it is unusually responsive. It's not a passive year, it's an amplifying year. Whatever identity you stabilize in the final stretch before entering it will determine how the year unfolds. If you go in fragmented, the year will amplify fragmentation. If you go in divided, the year will amplify conflict. If you go in aligned, the year will amplify coherence. 2026 is a magnifier, not a miracle worker. That's why the choice you're facing right now is not about goals, it's about self-definition. Are you going to remain loyal to the identity shaped by fear, scarcity, emotional survival, and outdated self-beliefs? Or are you going to step into the identity shaped by intuition, resonance, trust, and inner truth? The universe isn't waiting for you to prove anything. It's waiting for you to choose which version of you it should mirror back. Think about the instincts you've been receiving lately. the urge to simplify, the desire to protect your peace, the discomfort around old environments, the intuitive push to change something in your routine, your relationships, your priorities, your boundaries, your path. These aren't random impulses. They're invitations. They're adjustments coming from the version of you already living in 2026. That version is trying to guide you toward coherence because coherence is the only language the universe cannot misinterpret. If you ignore these impulses, you don't get punished. You just stay the same. But if you follow them, even in small ways, the entire structure of your timeline shifts. You become readable. You become matchable. You become someone your future self can merge with. And from that point forward, manifestation stops being something you chase and becomes something you embody. You're standing at a quantum choice point right now. Not the dramatic kind that demands a leap of faith, but the subtle kind that rewrites the architecture of your future. You don't need to make huge decisions. You don't need to reinvent everything. You only need to choose the version of yourself that feels like truth. That one choice determines everything about how 2026 unfolds. Here is what most people never understand. The universe does not match your desires. It matches your identity. And the identity you choose in this final stretch of the year becomes the frequency 2026 will reflect back with precision. So let me ask you, gently but clearly, who are you choosing to be on the edge of this new timeline? Are you choosing the version of you who fears repeating the past? Or the version who finally learned they're not the person they once were? Are you choosing the version who hesitates because they don't trust themselves? Or the version who acts when instinct speaks? Are you choosing the version who needs permission? Or the version who understands that alignment is permission? Your future self already knows the answer. You can feel the pull. You can feel the resonance. You can feel the quiet recognition inside you. The sense that the life you've been preparing for is finally close enough to touch you. All that's left is grounding this identity into something stable, coherent, embodied, and sustainable. Insight alone won't do that. Inspiration alone won't do that. You need structure. The kind that helps your nervous system, your energy, and your consciousness integrate this new frequency long enough for your reality to reorganize around it. Everything you need to close this year with clarity and step into 2026 as your most aligned self is inside the Quantum Rebirth Transformation Guide. This is the ebook I designed to help you release what no longer serves, reset your frequency, and activate the identity that's been quietly waiting to emerge. If this video stirred something in you, the book is your next step. You'll find the link waiting in the pinned comment. Your next timeline is already forming. Do it for your future self.